Hi everyone, I am so excited because I am speaking with author Annie Ward and we are talking about her brand new, just came out in March 5th, not just a month old, and it's called Beautiful Bad. And she has it right in front of her, so she's going to show us all of these covers.
Okay, so we will start with, this is the American cover.
I love that cover.
It's actually really cool. If you look, you can open it up and it still has the artwork on the inside cover. It's very pretty. I was really excited when I saw that one.
Oh my gosh.
So we also have, this is the Canadian cover, which is also just awesome. If you notice down here, there's a little spot of blood in the beautiful living room, an indication that all is not well.
All is not well.
And then the last one is very similar to the Canadian. This is the English. This is the one for the UK. So similar to the Canadian, but not quite. There's no blood. I think the English are being a little bit more polite.
And you know what? On Instagram, with the cover, with the US cover, I see so many people making pictures out of that with their faces and stuff.
There have been some really great question and answers and things that have been done where people have held up the book. So it's been nice.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I love the title. I love that title too.
Well, I can share a secret with you, is that I didn't come up with the title. That wasn't my title at all. I called it something completely different, and my agent came up with that title just a couple of weeks before she went to Frankfurt to try to sell the book. So I have to give her the credit for that.
Oh, wow. Anyway, I love the title, and I love this book. I just finished this book this morning. I like to read it right before I talk to you guys because it needs to be fresh in my head, and I'm going to let you talk about it because I have never read. I was like reading it. I'm like, everybody was saying on Amazon, I don't know if you saw this, but everybody is like, you won't be able to turn the last 50 pages fast enough. And I was like, okay, well, we'll see. And yes, that is absolutely true.
Oh, I'm so happy. I'm so happy that you feel that way. And definitely the last 50 pages kind of wrote themselves where, you get an idea and you just start writing and you can't stop. And at certain points I was thinking, oh, am I really going to do this? And I felt sort of ashamed at where the story was going. But
and you know what? And sometimes when people say that, they mean because, like skimming. No, because you can't, everybody. Listen carefully. You cannot miss a word. Don't read it so fast that you're missing stuff, okay? Read it as fast as you can, but don't skip paragraphs because these paragraphs are important to the story.
It does all come together.
That is my advice for everyone. So tell us, Annie. Tell us about this story.
Okay, well, Beautiful Bad is definitely a dark and twisty domestic psychological thriller, but it's also a sweeping romance that spans decades and continents. At the core of the story is this really tragic love triangle between three people who are damaged and toxic, but share this ferocious bond and would do literally anything for each other, which is, as you know, is the problem.
Interesting. I like you phrasing it like that, but go ahead.
As I've been traveling around the last 6 months or so, talking to people about the book, I think one of the things that most people find curious is that the very first draft of this book, which I wrote probably 9 years ago and then had to put on the shelf for a while, was a memoir about my experience. I know people always give me that look like, but it's changed so much. It's changed drastically. But the very first draft was a memoir based on my experience of living and working in the Balkans in the late 90s. I went and moved to Sofia, Bulgaria in 1996. I was following a love interest that didn't work out and found myself with an apartment in the Balkans.
Wow.
And, there were some people at that time, like my parents, who didn't think it was a very safe place for a young lady to be on her own. But the great thing about being there was that there was writing work. I found work as a travel journalist, regular journalist. I found screenwriting work, and it was so cheap. And it had beaches and mountains and nice food and people, so I ended up staying. And the very earliest draft of this book was a memoir based on my adventures there, meeting a best friend and meeting the man that I would go on to marry.
But he's nicer.
He's Well, see, that's actually interesting that you say that, because I've had some people say, "Why did you choose such an atypical romantic interest?" Because he's not, you know, the wealthy, educated banker that is usually, like, very often a romantic interest in these books. And the truth is, like, I find him to be a very interesting, witty, warm, loyal, brave character. And I was a little bit surprised when there were, gosh, how dare you not like him? So I don't know. Yeah, he's definitely nicer than some of the things that Ian does in the book.
Well, you know what you'll find very interesting is I have a daughter named Annie.
Okay.
But her full name is Angelica, but we call her Annie. And then my fifth child, I have 6 children. My 5th child is named Ian. So,
oh gosh.
And
That's
you just don't see that name in a book very often. Okay, so as I'm reading this, but I have to tell you, I was thinking about this morning because all I've been thinking about today is this book. Okay, and I was thinking, when you're reading a psychological thriller about a couple meeting, right? And so what you're looking for is signs. Okay, you're looking for signs like, couldn't she have been smarter? Right? Well, I was realizing that the lines you were using for him that he used, right? We've all heard those lines. We've all fallen for those lines. Like I can't say, like, Maddie, you should have known because when he said this, it's like, no, because when guys said that to me, like, they were meant it, right?
No, you're absolutely right. The way that they met was definitely a little unusual at that restaurant in Eastern Europe, and I think that there was probably an immediate connection in that they were both drawn to the darkness in the other.
Yes, but what I think is, like, okay, and this isn't a giveaway to the story, I don't think, if we talk about his ex. No, it's because it's
no, that's fine.
Okay, because okay, I have been in situations because you're like, Maddie, he has like a girlfriend, like, and then it's like, but no, he likes me and he likes me better than her because he said that. He said and it's like, oh my gosh. I mean, so when that's why we get so attached to these thrillers, because we see that it's ordinary people. They start off where they're ordinary people falling in love in a maybe weird way, but not too weird because it happens in real life.
We make mistakes, don't we?
We make mistakes and it happens. And, so that's what I kept thinking about with Maddie, like, as I'm talking to her, and I'm like, no, run away from Ian.
Yeah, it definitely is supposed to feel like that early on. I'm glad that you got that.
Yes.
He's kind of the wolf.
Yeah. Anyway, so we can't talk much about this book because let me tell you, everybody, like, you don't want me to, because it is that good. It is so good. I am so happy I read nothing about it and I went into it and just, right into it. And it was so much fun because I love thrillers. So if you love thrillers, you are going to love this. But what I was thinking about, and I know you're a screenwriter, so I knew you were the perfect person to ask this question to, because when I'm reading, I'm like, how did you do it? Because I go back and I read that first chapter again. Okay. And I'm realizing, like, you are setting us up. I mean, you're setting us up for this ride. And I'm like, when you're plotting out a thriller, and it's specifically this kind of psychological, where every, like I told you, everybody, read every word, because just a word here and there is like, oh, why didn't I see that? Oh, why didn't I see? And you do such a good job. So, like, tell me how you do it. Tell us.
Oh my gosh, I can try. But I love that you say that, because this is something my mom says. Your mom's always your biggest fan. But my mom says this is the kind of book that you want to read twice, because when you get to the end and you realize what was really going on, it's fun to go back and see what you missed, because it's all there.
It's there.
So basically what I did was I wrote, the original story was a romance, but it was a romance between 2 people that were haunted by the past. He's been to a lot of places where there was war. So there were issues in the romance. And then my agent said, I really think that you should fictionalize this and turn it into, something, maybe a mystery. And I didn't want to do that at first. So that's when I took the break from the book and I put it on the shelf for a little bit. But when I went back to it and I looked at this romance, I thought, you know what? I could figure out a way to bookend it with a crime scene and then, the investigation and still tell the backstory that I really loved. And when I went to take the book to my agent, the recommendation was anchor it in the current, in the crime scene all the way throughout. So that's how I went through and started adding more and more of the crime scene. And I didn't go back in and throw in all of those little clues until I had the whole book finished. And then I went back and thought, how can I tip off that this is actually going on in one of their heads the entire time? Yeah. So I went back and kind of like sprinkling in the little, the red herrings and the clues and the cliffhangers and things like that. So it was a layering process. I started off with one thing, layered over it, and then did a third pass, and then a fourth pass for the editor that ended up buying it.
No, but that's really interesting for me as a reader because I really do try to get into, and maybe because I talk to you guys all the time, but I try to get into your head. Like, okay, so when she set me up for that scene, and that's why I did, and I went back and I did read some of those crime scenes because you do give a lot of great hints along the way, and to get inside Maddie's head a little bit more because that's another thing, it's more of like a distract, right? Like distract us with this. So we aren't thinking,
while I do
this. Yes. And you did that. It's like distract us with all of Maddie's good. Keep distracting, and then we were like, what? And then, but it's not that it's not there. And that's what is so beautiful about it, because you're right. Your mom is right. Moms are always right though, because I'm a mom and I'm always right.
I'm a mom. I'm always right too.
Yeah, so there we go. We're always right. But that is.
There's I just wanted to mention that it's so interesting because there is a nugget of truth that is the key to everything, literally in the first 3 pages. And as far as I can tell, no one's picked up on it the first time through.
No, I did. I definitely did. Because I went back. You don't see it there, but go back. I tell everybody to do that anyway, because that's the beauty of, especially thrillers. You got to go back. And then as I'm reading the first chapter, I'm like, oh, Annie, you are so smart.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, thank you.
Yeah, so, okay, I know you're a screenwriter.
Yeah.
Are you thinking about making this into a screenplay?
Well, I'm actually allowed to go ahead and say this at this point, but the movie rights have already been optioned. They were optioned by Warner Brothers, and the woman who wants to produce it, who in conjunction with Warner Brothers, her name is Sue Kroll, and she's the producer of A Star Is Born, which was a really fantastic movie this year. It got a lot of attention.
A little movie.
A little movie. So she and I spoke on the phone, and it was just like synergy. And the really cool thing is, because my background is in Hollywood, that's where I went to college and film school, I know that a lot of times, when a book is optioned, it's like, okay, good for you. We'll never see that on the screen. I mean, not very many of them go on to be made, but they actually are already taking the next steps moving forward. So that everybody involved with the book is really, really pleased about that, obviously.
Yeah, I was going to say, only you know the business of that, because authors get so excited when they say it's been optioned, and then 5 years later, they're like,
Absolutely.
you just take the money and you just be like, okay, whatever. But, if you know that it's already, here's my thing is, like, now I'm like, who is Ian? Like, who is going to play Ian,
Oh my gosh, there are so many fantastic actors that would do a great job as Ian. I feel a little superstitious talking about it. I'll put it this way: nobody has been attached to the project yet, except for, I will tell you this: there is a screenwriter. It's not me. It's a big screenwriter, whereas my screenwriting career has been, like straight to TV science fiction films.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I wrote a screenplay one time for fun, because I was reading a book about him, and I was like, I wonder if I could do this, because it's like, I don't know, writing a book to me seems like, oh my gosh, I can't write a book, I can't write that many words, I can't, but a screenplay, I was like, oh, this is interesting. So I followed this one little, like, write a screenplay in 10 days or something like that, and I did it, like, I wrote it, it's not good, but it's like, it was something that I finished and I was able to like understand it. So I always think that when I'm reading books, I think it's helped actually just even doing that process, because I know a little bit, like teeny tiny little bit, but I also like when I'm talking to authors who are screenwriters too, because then it's like, I know you could be thinking in your head, like you could do it, but think about how much you're going to learn from that screenplay, like having somebody do it, like that's going to be amazing.
I do think that my screenwriting training has helped me think cinematically, and
Yeah.
also because in screenwriting there's such a huge emphasis on the dialogue, and you're
Yes.
not allowed to kind of go off and describe the sky
Right.
for way too long in a screenplay because they're looking for a ratio of white to black on the
Right.
page. And if they see too much description, they know you're an amateur and
Yeah.
it's not happening. So I actually think there's a lot of freedom in writing novels because you can really kind of
Interesting.
go off and talk about whatever you want. Whereas in screenplays, they can't be more than 120 pages, and the first act turn has to occur here, and the second act turn has to occur here. And I always feel like I'm a little bit constrained by the rules.
Yes.
So,
That is for
but the
sure.
rules exist for a reason.
They do. And you know, just because I know, like I talk to a lot of screenwriters too, and you know, unfortunately, you know, to get a screenplay to a movie is such a like daunting, like
Oh
it's
my gosh.
just
I mean,
it's
the first little film that I ever wrote and that was produced was back when I was in film school, and it was just a short film. And I sold it to MTV. It was
Aw.
exciting at the time. I was young. I loved MTV. But
Yes.
it was like 12 minutes long, and it stars Adam Scott from Parks and Recreation, which is kind of a fun aside because
Love
he's pretty
him.
popular now. And he was unknown when he did this. But when I saw the crew list for this teeny tiny little film, it just was scrolling and
Oh
scrolling and
my
scrolling.
gosh.
So, I mean, that gives you an idea of what goes into making a feature film. I mean, it's
Yeah. Yeah.
gigantic.
Yeah, and when you see how many films actually come out, I mean, it's a little bit better because we got Amazon and Netflix and, you know, some other things too now. But when you see the ones that actually make it to a big screen, how many a year? Like, it's just, you know, it's a crazy number. But
There's definitely a big choice these days.
yeah, but this one, no, this is a movie, okay? And, you know, for people like me, I mean, I'll go to that movie and I'm going to be like, oh, the book was so much better. But that doesn't matter because you know what? A lot of people will go to the movie and then they go home and read the book.
Yeah, I know. People do that. I think
Yes.
that's a little weird.
No, because they want to now. They're like, I want to
You got to read the book and then go see the movie.
Yeah, because they're like, no, I want to see what I meant. Like, you know, because they can only put so much in the movie. But
That's true. That's true. I'm a little bit worried about the fact that Beautiful Bad is a little bit epic in scope, and I know that they're going to have to lose a lot of the backstory, but that will make a lot of people very happy to stay fixated on the suspense.
Well, that's true, and that's why people will go back and want to read the book because they'll want that backstory.
Hopefully,
they will definitely. Hopefully. Oh no, I can guarantee you. I know I love their backstory. So that backstory is so important in this book, and a lot of times thrillers don't have. So I felt like with them, I really knew them. You know what I mean? Like they weren't just two characters and it's like, oh, they got together and then things didn't work out. No, it's like you knew them. You knew their personality. You got their full, like, so I can't say more than
I know those people pretty well.
I know those people. I know them.
The other thing is, you know, it was very awkward at the end when it did turn out that it was a love triangle between these three people, because it turns out it's a love triangle based on me, my husband, and my best friend, who's still my best friend. And, you know, so that was super awkward, but it was fiction at that point in time. But I didn't know those people's voices, so it was fun to write about them.
Oh my gosh. Well, let's show everybody the covers one more time. I want to tell everyone I will have the IndieBound link because this book is out. You can go support your local bookstore, or you can go get it on Amazon if you learn the Kindle like today, which I highly suggest getting it today. But, you know, there we go. Sure. And that one. And then this one, which I just love so,
okay.
So
this is the one, if people are listening from America, this is the one you can get here.
Yes.
We're really excited, though, because we've sold it in like 18 countries now, so we've got to have 18 different covers.
Oh my gosh, that is amazing. And you know what, Annie, when this gets all done, when this is all said and done, let's talk again, because then we can like critique it, you know.
Absolutely, for sure. That would be great. I would love to talk to you anytime you want to talk.
Yeah, because then we can talk about it more because it won't be so secretive because it'll be out, right? And we can like discuss it like in depth. That would be fun, right?
I did a reading the other night at a bookstore not too far from here, and I felt like the bookshop owner and I were talking in code the entire time.
Talking in code.
Because I didn't want them to know what happened, and I felt sort of bad. It felt kind of like an inside joke when it's not. It just don't want to give it away.
No, not this early on, but by that time we can talk. You know, we can like talk about it. So
Sounds
I
great.
am so happy for you. I really am. This is incredible, and it was what I wanted to hear was that it was going to be made into a movie, and I am so happy I got to read it. I can't even express.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being interested and for inviting me to talk with you. It's been really fun, and I mean, it's just. Thank you. It's so flattering.
Yeah, well, keep me up to date and on any future writing projects. Keep me up in the loop, and I'll read anything you write. Okay.
Okay, wonderful.
Okay. Have a great day.
You too.
Okay,
Bye.
Bye-bye.